for you. And first is our recognition of our trail riding people who are keeping track of their trail riding hours. And Stacy has a certificate and an award to give to some of our most prolific trail riders. Bernice and Willie Ambergy not only have ridden 50 hours of trail, but 150 hours, and they're getting their certificate and their patches tonight. Others who have sent in their hours and acknowledged their 50 hours are Stacy Neese, Tucker Neese, Kenny Joe Neese, Josh Strong, Maddie Strong, Owen Neese, Joe Creech, David Ditch, and Hunter Stidham. Now, if you've been trail riding, if you want to be part of this program, all you have to do is keep track of your hours. Stacy has a little logbook that you can get at the extension office and keep track of your hours. It's on the honor system. Nobody's going to be checking to see if you actually rode the hours you report. And there are felt badge awards for every 50 miles, 50 and then 150 and so forth on up, and happy trails. And we'd like to acknowledge that you're doing that. Okay, next, our trail ride for the spring, we're still on for that as far as we know. And those dates are May 20th through the 23rd. And more details will be coming up about that. But in order to have the trail ride, we've got to start marking trails and, if necessary, clearing brush and limbs and things that may have come down during the ice storms earlier. So our first trail marking meeting will be April the 3rd. It's a Saturday. We're going to be meeting up at Elkview at the new campground, not on the left where they have it all fenced off and stuff, but at our new campground on the right-hand side of the road, directly across from the campground that we were meeting at before. So it will be 9 o'clock in the morning, April the 3rd, and we will be using four-wheelers and side-by-sides if you've got those and can have an extra person along with you to spray paint trees. And that's what we'll be doing and getting started on that. We're going to be having some additional things available for our members and other people who are interested in horses, and especially those interested in trail riding. Be watching the Facebook page for information about that. And some of our members are planning on hosting trail rides in areas that perhaps you haven't been before. And that'll be neat because sometimes people get tired of riding the same trails all the time. So watch the Facebook page for information on that. Now, if you don't do Facebook, you can always go to the extension office website, and there will be a posting there that will help you with that information. Tonight we have with us a lady from the Kentucky Horse Council who's going to come and talk about what that is and the advantages of it. And she's going to come and introduce herself, and welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Let me get your PowerPoint pulled up here, Sarah.
Okay.
If I can. Let's see, can somebody on Zoom please give me a thumbs up, or so just unmute yourself and say you can see the PowerPoint, please.
We got a thumbs up.
Did we get a thumbs up? Good deal.
Awesome. Thank you guys for letting me come and talk to you tonight. I promise I'll be speedy so that you can see my brother Bob do his talk. But my name is Sarah Coleman. I'm the executive director of the Kentucky Horse Council. I actually started there in the very, very end of September. So if you have any really hard questions, I'm probably going to have to get back to you with the answers. But you can go to the next one. Thank you. So you'll see this is just our mission statement, distilled down very, very briefly. We are a 501c3 that focuses heavily on leading, educating, and protecting the equestrian community in Kentucky. So, and that's pretty broad. We do a lot of different things. We have a lot of different initiatives, and I just wanted to take a couple of seconds to talk about some of them. So the Kentucky Horse Council is a membership-based organization, but the programs that we offer are to people who are even not members. So if I mention anything tonight that you all might be interested in, please know that you don't need to be a member to be able to apply for those services, or if you know of anybody who might need those services. So first, education-wise, we do a lot of different education programs. This is our livestock investigative training. We actually used to do it at Moorhead. We're working on some different areas now to do it since COVID. We're not allowed on their campus, unfortunately, this fall, they don't think. But this is a training that we offer to all of animal control officers, policemen, firefighters, pretty much anybody who is interested in learning about basic livestock care that might not have a lot of background knowledge with it. Oh, it's angry.
Yeah, I know.
So this is the large animal emergency rescue training. This one is actually, I have not seen it yet. I'm really stoked to see it because it's really, really neat. We have a husband and wife team that come in from North Carolina, and we have, I think we have 50 spots open, and we can have as many auditors. We're not, yes, auditors. I'm not allowed to call them spectators, sorry. The horse park will not let us call them that. Who can come in and see, and basically they learn how to get large animals out of really tough situations, whether it's they've fallen at a cross country jump at the horse park, they're involved in a barn fire, it's a trailer accident. It's hands-on training for those rescue personnel to remove the animals from those situations safely. The Kentucky Equine Networking Association is basically, we do a dinner speaker series 4 times a year. COVID, of course, kind of screwed that a little bit. So we're actually going to offer our first one on Zoom, and then after that, we're hoping to be able to offer that again in person. It's typically been held at the Red Mile, was the last location that we held it in Lexington. And it covers everything from horse health to emerging issues in the equine industry to pasture health, which Dr. Bob kindly spoke about, mud management also. And that's also something that if anybody has any ideas for speakers, we would be more than happy to try to help them with that as well. So this is really my main focus is I wanted to make sure that everybody knew about what we consider our welfare protection programs for the horses. So we were lucky enough, the Horse Council was able to receive 4 tons of feed that was donated from Hallway and also from McCauley's that came down on Tuesday. And the week before, 300 bale of hay was graciously donated by the Meriworth Foundation and the Susan S. Donaldson Foundation that we were able to bring down. So we try very hard to help people when they need it. So this is we call it the SOHO. It's the, excuse me, the safety net in particular is most utilized of all of our equine protection programs. So this is basically if somebody ends up in a financial situation where they can't pay to feed their horse, they can basically fill out a form and ask for assistance, and the Horse Council will put it before our Health and Welfare Committee. And once it's approved, what we try to do, so we have a relationship with some of the feed companies, is we basically call that feed company and place a $250 stipend. And then the horse owner can go and pick up the feed of their choice or the hay of their choice from that person. So we feed up to 2 horses, and there is a 30-day extension on top of that first 30 days. What we've done this year with the floods you all have had down here is we basically took that line item in our budget that's normally about $5,000 to $6,000. We took half of it and brought it down here. So we've been in touch with the extension agency and things like that to figure out how we can help you guys immediately without having to fill out forms and wait for things, because there's no time. I mean, we all clearly know that. So this is our gelding voucher program. We actually offer through our SOHO, our Save Our Horses Fund, we offer financial assistance to someone who might have an intact stallion that they would like gelded. And we provide up to $150 payable to that vet, which whatever vet you guys care to use, to make sure that horse is gelded. And we also do the same with the euthanasia program. If there's an older horse that's in pain, not doing well, and the horse owner might not have the financial resources to euthanize that horse, they can basically call us and ask for help, and we will make sure that that horse is taken care of. Membership perks, this is just me. I'm trying to tell you guys all the membership perks we have, even though just remember, you don't have to be a member to utilize our services. We offer $1 million excess personal liability insurance policy. So if you are a Kentucky Horse Council member, you can check the box that says you also want the insurance. It's the same price, whether you do with insurance or without insurance for an individual. And it will offer you a line of insurance protection that protects you personally if your horses get out or if they hurt someone else, whether it's on your property or you're on a trail ride, for example. These are other membership perks. They don't look super exciting, but I promise they actually are. The NTRA, it's not really thoroughbred based. That's just the program name that they do with it. It offers all kinds of different discounts from like John Deere, Sherwin-Williams, Office Depot. I don't actually know what Anthony James Partners is, but there too. And the equine equipment discount program is, it hasn't been around very long. It's based out of Georgetown, but it basically matches equipment prices to make sure that you get the best deal. Horse Park, if you guys ever come up to Lexington and want to go to the horse park, it's discount rates on that and also discount rates in the gift shop, which nobody ever utilizes, I have found out. So please, if you are a Kentucky Horse Council member, show your card and they will give you a 20% discount, which is pretty significant there. And also on our horse country tours. And there's a ton of horse country tours. And the Horse Magazine, especially if you all are involved in any kind of education, whether it's like 4-H, FFA, anything, if you're a teacher and want to use some really good equine health-based education, The Horse is a lovely magazine, and you can get it for literally $5 with your membership to the Horse Council. So our website, just to kind of drive you guys all to our website, we have an awesome, Lauren, my coworker, does a really good job of aggregating all of the open jobs that she's aware of on that website. She's done a really good job with updating our calendar of events to make sure it's non-breed, non-discipline specific. News, health information. Right now, of course, we're dealing with EHV outbreak. So there's a lot of updated information on that website from Rusty Ford. And we also offer, the Kentucky Horse Council itself offers scholarships to either if you want to go to college, if you want to go to an equine trade school, horseshoeing school. And in addition to the scholarship that the Horse Council offers, we also have an entire page of scholarship information that goes to all different places, AQHA scholarships and 4-H scholarships and all kinds of equine oriented money on the table. So this is our general contact information, should you need it. Also my personal contact information. And the girl with me, I'm in the hat, the girl with me is Kristen Werner. She actually works for the Jockey Club and she's been my ride or die coming down here to do deliveries down here. So if we see you, we're back and forth quite a bit, but she's the other girl who's been helping me out a lot. But again, my name is Sarah. That's my cell phone number and my email. If you guys need anything, if you can think of anything that the Horse Council can do to assist you, to assist other equine owners in the state, we would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Well, help me give Sarah a round of applause. Sarah just touched on it briefly, but the Kentucky Horse Council did donate huge to Breathitt County for all our losses in the flood. We really can't thank you all enough, Sarah, and your organization, really.
Glad to do it.
I'm going to give a big plug for the website. Because that newsletter comes out and you will find out more things. You'll find out things you probably never even knew that you needed to know. But it's all in one place. And Lauren does an absolutely incredible job. One of the classes that I used to teach at UK is for the seniors. It's a senior seminar class. And I used to get all kinds of great topics for class just by reading the newsletter. I was like, I hate to make it sound like I was being lazy, but I was being good use of my resources. So it is really something. And I really hope that Kina comes back. It's a great opportunity to come and meet other horse people. We get to do it in person. The food's great. But I like it from the standpoint and what I do. Some of my colleagues from UK always come. I never sit with them. I'd rather sit with somebody else and get to know somebody. So if you're there and you want somebody to sit with, I'll sit with you. I'm happy to. So are we ready?
Well, no, not really.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, it's all on me, Dr. Coleman. But I wanted to introduce you. I thought that was important. we've had a few people jump on online. I know everybody here probably knows Dr. Coleman already, but we've got Dr. Bob Coleman. He's been instrumental in getting this Master Horseman program off its feet and going. This is our third installment. Dr. Coleman will be talking about tack and equipment tonight. He's got some illustrations here. We'll do our best to show those off to you. I hope the camera is working well for those of you that are working, looking from home. But without further ado, I'll start your PowerPoint here, Dr. Coleman. Put the screen on you. Can everybody hear us okay that's on Zoom?
Thumbs up.
Anybody? Yes, okay, good. All right. Can everybody see Dr. Coleman's PowerPoint on Zoom? Yep, I got a thumbs up. Sounds good. I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Coleman.
Great. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to come down and to work with Reed and David and the people that wanted to have this. Thanks for coming tonight. I don't know if you're like me, but getting out of the office, getting in the car, going for a drive, like, wow, this is way too exciting. So we will talk about probably one of my most favorite subjects. I didn't go to school to learn about this. I have gravitated to it, wide variety. And I think a lot of times we have lots of stuff. And when we think about it, so what we get will be dependent upon the horses that we have. What do we need? Well, it really does depend. We also depend on, if we're doing something where maybe we're being competitive, there might be rules and regulations within the riding and driving disciplines that we have to follow. Understanding some of those can be a challenge. It might make you really wonder about doing that. And then there's going to be some personal choices. So can I do this myself?
I think so. You might just tap this, if you want to just tap that.
Okay, or I can use the arrow button.
Yeah.
I'm better with arrows. It's kind of like tacking equipment. Do you get really spoiled using the stuff that you're used to using? And then when you go and have to ride in a different saddle for whatever reason, it's just not comfortable. I always blame the horse, but I think it can be that we become very complacent. So kind of think about from a tech, and we can't go over all of it, but sort of the halters and shank things, because those are something that we have to have. I mean, it's pretty hard to have a horse and do anything with them and not have a halter and a shank at some point. Yes, you see all sorts of people out there that are leading horses and they're walking along beside them like a trained puppy dog. But they probably learned how to do that starting with a halter and a shank, would be my guess. And then bits and bridles, and I brought a few because it's something that I have a huge interest in, because I think it's one of the things that we can be overwhelmed by it when you think about it. And saddles and pads, and that's for another day. That's for another day. Okay, so I do have to do it your way. Whatever. From a halter standpoint, we use them for daily handling. There's always that debate. You turn them out with a halter on, yes or no. It depends on who you are, where you live, what your horses are. I think what we learned a long time ago in the horsemanship books were you should never turn them out with a halter. I've had a few that if you didn't turn them out with a halter and a drag rope, you were never going to catch them again. So if I needed to catch them, I'm going to do some things that I need to do. Same with when they're in the barn. Do you leave it on or do you take it off? One of the things that I had for a generalization or a rationalization, I leave it on the horse in the barn because then I know where it is. Okay. let's not be judgmental. If that's what helps, that's what helps. And certainly I like them when I'm leading horses because I want to I want them to go where I want them to go. I would like them to be respectful. I'd like them to pay attention. So if we start on the far side with the leather halters. So again, depending on what part of the industry you're in, leather halters are the norm. And people have a lot of considerations about them. I look at them and they can be very nice. They can be very expensive. You've got to clean them. There's a lot of things you have to do to them. The nylon halters tend to be a little less expensive, maybe a little more variety. You can have creativity. You can go buy those nice nylon halters and have your horse's name embroidered in them. You can get them different colors. And if that's important to you, that's okay. And then the rope halters, which is interesting, if you look at it, there's the two. There's the green one and the white one. That white one is really old school. Has anybody ever seen one of those or used one of those? That was our rope halter back in the day. So in the early 60s, that's what we had for a rope halter. And that's what you had. Our halter choices when I started where you could have a leather halter or you could have a rope halter. The nylon halters hadn't really started to be available yet. But in any case, with any of the halters, what you need to think about, or at least what I think about, is I want to know that they're going to fit. I like them personally. I like them to have some level of adjustment so that I can get them to fit well. And I kind of like the nylon ones because they're really easy to clean. I put them in a mesh bag and throw them in with a load of towels when my wife's doing the laundry. But then I got to wait, and when I hear the machine stop, I got to run down and get them out so I don't get caught, because every now and then she gets a little upset. But things like that. One of the things that people will say, well, you should never turn a horse out with a nylon halter because if he gets caught, it won't break. Well, you can buy the ones that will break. You can get breakaway halters if that's a concern. But I look at some of the leather halters, the really good ones, I'll promise you they won't break. The really well-made ones, there is no way. The only time they might break is if the horse is tied up with one and the hardware gives way. But the leather, probably not, unless it's really old and decrepit. So you have to think about those sorts of things and pick what you like. For the longest time, I didn't have a comfort with rope halters just because I hadn't used the new ones. And now that I have, I quite like them for certain things. Am I going to use them for everything? No. I have a horse that's a UK horse. We don't use leather halters on him because he reacts to the oil in the leather severely. He gets like eczema all behind his ears. It's a mess. So he doesn't get one. And he has to have a very clean halter. He's very needy, very needy. So I worry about that. Lead shanks, again, personal preference. What do you like? What works in your hands? Because, again, a whole bunch of choice. If we start on the far left, if we're looking at it. So, that first one is a very nylon, really soft, probably feels really good, but if it runs through your hands, it'll probably set them on fire. I mean, great for rope burns. So I don't like them. If you tie a horse up with that and he pulls back, good luck getting the knot undone. Because probably, unless you have a knife, probably not going to happen. The two middle ones are kind of that new sort of poly cotton combination. Not quite the marine rope, but some of the ones that the new Horsemen are telling us that we should use that actually I quite like. I like how they feel. I like the weight of them. There's a lot of things I like about them. So that's what I personally use. The one that has the bull snap, where I grew up, bull snaps, that's what you use because they were stronger than the pull snaps. Bull snaps with gloves are really hard to operate. So getting them on and off can be a real challenge. So you don't see them very much. The cotton shanks, There you can get, how big do you want it? I have a colleague that sent me on a shopping trip to buy tack and equipment for her class. What a terrible job sending me to Equine Fair to shop. But she wanted 1-inch cotton shanks. And I was like, what are you tying up? I said, why do you want that? She said, because nobody will steal them because they're so big. I said, yeah, but you also can't tie a horse up with them very easily because they're so big. But that's what she wanted. I couldn't find them anywhere. And I got the strangest looks from people when I said, do you have this in 1 inch? It's like, no, we don't. This is as big as we go. So that becomes an issue. I was in China a number of years ago, and we were working with some kids teaching them showmanship. And their biggest problem was they had little hands and they had 3/4-inch cotton shanks. They didn't have enough hand to hold the rope. So we got asked, what would you want to bring? I said, a nice leather shank. Something a little lighter for these kids because they can't do it properly because it's too big. And I think we should look at that. What are you comfortable with? And if you like a 3/4-inch shank and you want it to be 10 feet long, good. If you want it to be 6 feet long, that's fine too. It's what works for you. And then the leather shanks or the with or without a chain, you can also get nylon ones. Certain parts of the industry like the nylon ones. I'm not a big fan of them, but it is what it is. And what do you need? I can go, because I did make this claim at the last meeting with Dr. Camargo, I can go down to my truck right now and I can get you a cotton shank and I can get you a cotton shank with a chain on it and at least 2 halters. Lariat, rope, and a twitch. It's in my truck right now. Why are they there? Because they're not the ones that I use. So if I need them for something else and they don't ever come home, it's not going to break my heart. My good ones stay with my horses. So thinking about it, but it's just about the thought process. And then when we get the bits and bridles, oh my goodness gracious, how much choice do we have? Depends again on what you ride, what you use, what you prefer, a lot of different things. Yes, that is my basement. And somebody else saw that picture and said, how many of those have you used? And I said, in that part of the picture, about half of them. And why don't you use them now? Because it didn't work for the horse I was riding, so I had to get something else. And sometimes that's what you have to do. It is trial and error. And sometimes it might work today, but it won't work tomorrow. But the next day it will. A real challenge. So what we use, whether we've got our hunt seat horse with his D-ring snaffle, I actually like that particular bridle because it has buckles, not the little stud things that the English people use. I hate those stud things because they're so hard. I have arthritis, so it's really hard for me to fix the bridle. So I like buckles. And like my reins have buckles because I like buckles. And then I've got my Western bridle. That's a brow band bridle. Lots of Western bridles don't have brow bands. Debate about what we should use. Depends. The materials, generally leather, but there's nylon ones. There's some new ones out now. It's called Biothane. And it is a man-made or a synthetic product. Easy to clean, fairly tough. I don't like the feel of it, but I don't like how I can't get it to slide through my hands the way I can get leather reins to slide through my hands. I also have some reins that are braided nylon cord. Way back in the day, we used to have, it was made out of parachute cord and they were braided and they're a little thicker in width-wise, they're not so deep, but they're probably an inch, maybe an inch and a quarter. I used to like them because I come from Canada. So riding in the wintertime, when you got great big mitts on, I need something that I can get a hold of and know I'm going to get a hold of it. And it was just easier to ride with those because I didn't want to take my mitts off. And when it's 18 below zero and you're still allowed to ride, you don't ride in gloves because you won't feel your fingers when you get back. You won't. Then they will really hurt. I promise you. So the other big thing about tonight, if this is the only thing that you go home with, is that there's essentially 2 kinds of bits. There's a snaffle bit and there's a curb bit or a leverage bit, period. It is based on how they work. A leverage bit, so it has leverage, it increases the amount of pressure that you can apply with a small amount of pressure in your hand. Versus the snaffle bit's direct pressure, so if I put 5 pounds of pressure on that horse's mouth with my pull, that's all he gets. But I can magnify that 5 pounds in that leverage bit. It's like children in the playground on the teeter-totter. If you move the fulcrum, you can have a mechanical advantage for the small person to launch the big person. Your bit's doing exactly the same thing. Some horses you want to have that, others you don't. And Sarah made the comment when we first got here, it's about, the hands. I actually think it's about the head. Who's making the decision about what their hands do? That indicates how severe or unsevere the bit might be. There's some other things too, but in general, we put that bridle on, does Eli look like he's in trouble with either bit? No. And it really helps when you're doing presentations like this. You got to have a really good model. And you can spend all day changing bridles on him. And he'll just stand there and open his mouth and let you put the bridle on. He's actually pretty good after the dentist got there. So when we put these on, we're going to have some places that we need to think about. So the corners of their mouths, we're going to have the bars, which is the interdental space between their teeth. Bone's fairly close, not a lot of covering there, can be a little sensitive. We can bruise that if we're not careful. There's debate as to which is more sensitive, the bars or their tongue. I think in some cases, the horses don't like their tongue being grabbed, and that may be some of it. But regardless, there's a little bit of pressure there. There's the roof of their mouth, depending on your hands and the bit, whether or not that will be impacted. And a lot of times people will look at some of those leverage bits and say, it's a curb bit, it's got to hit them in the roof of the mouth. No, it doesn't, and I'll show you that in a minute. Maybe over their nose, depending again what kind of bit we're using. There's some of the new ones that are out there that have added in a place where you can add pressure to the bridge of the nose. For horses that get a little fussy and you need a little more strength, a little more, make them a little more respectful. I didn't bring one of those. And then the pole. So your curb bit puts pressure on the pole as you engage and everything. And I also forgot their chin groove because I have a picture, so I can't see my dot very well. But it's all dependent on how we put things together. So, a really simple, have to watch where I am, but the pressure is going to be just right on the bars. And one of the things, if you want to figure out, this one has limited grab to it because, and you want to figure it out, and the people that aren't here can't have to believe me. I can't pinch my finger, so I can't grab his tongue. So if you've got a horse that doesn't like that, this one might not be such a bad deal. He also isn't going to be able to grab it because it moves every which way from Sunday compared to, where did it go? I know it was here. Did I leave it in? Oh, there it is. Too much junk, too much junk. Versus this one, which I can get a hold of it pretty good. So that one that won't collapse quite so much probably has a little more possibilities. This one, certainly, I could hit him in the roof of his mouth with this, with very aggressive hands. That other one, probably not quite so much. And so a lot of people say, well, you can't affect the palate pressure with a snaffle bit. Oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can. It also makes a little bit of difference on how your horse is built. I look at it that, it's pretty simple when you really think about it. Yeah, we got all kinds, as I can display, and this is only a few of them. But when you think about it, so it doesn't matter if it's a curb bit or a snaffle bit. What do we have for parts? Well, we have a place to attach the headstall and a place to attach the rings. Both of them have that. Now, the curb bit has to have a curb strap attached to it, or at least you're supposed to if you want it to work properly. But I can put a curb strap on my snaffle bit too. And I do. Why? Because I like it to keep the bit stable. And there's some other reasons. Not everybody does. Some people do, some people don't. Again, it's a personal preference. So really, what's the one part that encompasses all bits? It's the mouthpiece. They all have one. And the things that affect mouthpieces affect all of them. It's not just because it's a curb bit or just because it's a snaffle bit. It's the mouthpiece. And so the things about bits and their differences, it's related to that. Do you mind if I turn this?
You're doing great, by the way.
I'm looking to see where the price tag is. So when we first start out, what do we think about? Well, thick or thin. I mean, that's not rocket science. None of this is rocket science, guys. It really isn't. The philosophy or the hypothesis or the theory or the concept behind thick or thin, the thicker the mouthpiece, the more pressure is dispersed over a greater surface area in the horse's mouth. So we think that that should make it a little less aggressive to the horse because the pressure is not going to be localized. Does that make sense? So we're going to try this now. I have two. I do have to look back. So fairly thick. I don't know, it's hard with, but it's thicker than my finger versus pretty darn thin. So is this going to give me a little more reaction? Possibly. So this would be my choice? Not necessarily. Now, I might not want to use this unless I really appreciate what it can do. But what if I have a horse with a small mouth? How happy is he going to be with this? Not happy at all, because there's no room. He's got a great big fat tongue and just a different mouth conformation, pardon me. I mean, this isn't going to be very comfortable. And you'll see it on people that want to keep their horse's mouth closed. So they put this in it because everybody has told me that fat is the best, or thick, or whatever term you'd like to, because it distributes the pressure. Well, that's great. And then we put a cavesson on and a flash noseband, and we crank them down as tight as we can because old Nellie won't keep her mouth closed. And that bothers us. And I never really thought about it. I was at a clinic a number of years ago. Great clinician. She's talking about stuff, and she's talking about how to adjust this bridle on this horse to get it to be a little more comfortable in his mouth and his face and just be softer. And it didn't dawn on me till after the fact, which is probably good because I shouldn't have asked the question anyway, not in front of everybody there. That would have been rude. But I asked her afterwards, I said, what if we changed that bit? She said, what do you mean? I said, what if we got a smaller bit? Because look how fat that is. He can't close his mouth. It's impossible. It's like, well, sure, you can put your size 8 foot in those size 7 boots. It'll fit. Get over it. They'll stretch a little bit. You'll walk funny. No. And we need to think about that. So in addition to that, the other thing, and I always forget to put it on, is what about weight? Do you want a heavy bit or a light bit? What does your horse like? In a lot of cases, it's easier if it's got a little more weight to it. Because when you ask and he responds and you release, it releases faster. Because it's physics. You didn't think you'd have to study physics when you came tonight, did you? But it's physics. So there's that. Shape. Generally, everybody thinks that they're all round or oval. Well, they aren't. They're all kinds of shapes. And what does that do? Well, it affects where the pressure is. You know, and so I have I don't know if this one's hard to see, but this is one of my favorites. And I don't know if you'll truly be able to get it through the camera. This is a triangle. So you look at it this way, it doesn't look too bad, other than it's got an edge there and it's got an edge here. Pretty aggressive, because this is going to concentrate the pressure. There's no two ways about it. Why would you use it? Because you have a horse that's being disrespectful. You ride in it every day? Probably not. You ride in it, you get the answers, you get back to where you're supposed to be, then go back to what you were riding in before. In a lot of cases, you will see it's a lot, or could. The design, and again, is that the pieces, the shit, is it twisted or not? A lot of people get quite upset over twisted wire mouthpieces. I've ridden with them. They brought 3 of mine. Have ridden with this one. And the horse got along reasonably well. It's pretty good size compared to these twisted wires that they look more like those things that you have in your survival pack that you can saw trees down with. I mean, this is pretty teeny tiny. This is going to put a lot of pressure. And if you have hands that do this, if you can saw a tree with this, what do you think you're going to do to the tongue and the bars and the corners? It's not going to be pretty. Do I know people that use these? Not this one. I know some people that have them that are this size. Might ride just to tune for a short period of a training ride, and then it's off. It's off. I got this one from a tack store. The lady had ordered it for a horse owner, and the horse owner had said, "Can you please get me the smallest twisted wire that you can find?" So she did. He took one look at it and said, "I can't use that. That's terrible. Look how skinny it is." And she said, "It's what you asked for." So being the nice person that I am and not having one in my collection, I bought it off her. So I've lots of those sorts of things. How many pieces? Generally 2. Actually, 1, 2, 3, multiple. So this is a snaffle bit. It is a straight bar snaffle bit, but it is still a snaffle bit. I've had people debate that no, it's something else. No, that's what it is. It's a direct pressure bit, period. But then we have the 3-piece mouthpiece. Some people call the centerpiece a dog bone. This happens to be a French link, is the catalog name for it. You'll get them like this. You can get them with what they call a lozenge. Funny little shaped things, same sort of thing. Now, the thing about this is it will never collapse on his tongue. And for some horses, because it will fit comfortably, kind of conform to his mouth, a lot of horses find this really comfortable. And like everything else, some people really like these, some people don't. Compared to this, which, well, it also has 3 pieces, it has a straight bar. And this sits in the horse's mouth with this bar right on his tongue. So when you engage it, it is going to push down his tongue and get a hold of him. This is called a Dr. Bristol, invented by Dr. Bristol in England a long, long time ago. Why? Because they needed a bit with a mouthpiece that would give a little more control to people that had carriage horses, so they could get them to stop and stand and be in control. Because if you think about it, back in the day when the cab was not an Uber, but it was a horse-drawn carriage, ladies with their long gowns, probably not really quick at getting in and out of the carriage. And, if I want my tip, I don't want my horse running off. I need to get a hold of them. So it was a driving bit that we have now put everywhere. You see them all over the place. The other ones from a design standpoint that I have to talk about, there it is. I'd never seen either one of these till I came to Kentucky. I don't know why, but I never had. So the sawtooth bit, the mule bit. Some people call it the bicycle chain bit. It is not. This is a bicycle chain bit because it's made with a bicycle chain. So lots of places to put pressure. Some people will say yes, but look at how flexible it is. So it kind of lays on their tongue, and maybe, but again, it depends on how much pressure you put on it. I also have a friend that said, well, these aren't all that bad if you put it in with the smooth side because of how it will conform to their tongue. I unfortunately see too many of them put in with the pointy side in because they want the control. But they're there. They're out there. Lots of them. They have other twisted bits. So this would be, it's called a slow twist, but it's pretty sharp. This is a bigger bit, also a slow twist. So it's got lots of edges to it. More off the bars. I like this one because it's not right on the bars where the twist starts versus this one, which it kind of is right there, and put a little more pressure on them. Gives a little more contact and grab on the tongue and do some. When we think about ports, and that a lot of people worry about that. We'll look more on it, but you know, how big is the port? And you only find ports on curved bits, right? No. I have a port on a snaffle bit. I have ports on I have all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's not, everybody thinks that this is what a curved bit has to be, and it's not true. Because you can put it, the mouthpiece can go wherever and it can be whatever. And we need to think about that. We'll come back to ports in a minute. We kind of already talked about this. So they're smooth, they're wrapped, twisted, inlaid. A lot of times they'll inlay them with copper or they'll wrap them with copper in order to produce some salivation. And that can help. And we'll look at the ported ones in a minute because the port depends on how tall it is and how wide it is. Suffice to say that we put a port in to give a place for the tongue to go. Basically, it's called tongue relief. And so where can it go? Now, if you have a really big, a really tall port, that's going to impact the roof of the horse's mouth. Whereas this one, all it does is gives tongue relief. There is, unless you have a very uniquely made horse, probably not going to touch the roof of his mouth because it's not tall enough. It's an anatomical, not impossibility, but pretty close. So versus, did you take my other one, Miss Sarah? This one was a curved bit, basically no port. But when you think about it, so you could say that should give a lot of tongue relief, and it probably would. But if the horse likes to be able to hold on to it, he may not be able to use his tongue to hold the bit and might just find it uncomfortable. So in some cases, I have one that is a V. And so the only place it can touch the roof of the horse's mouth, doesn't touch the tongue, and it rests right on the bars of the horse's mouth, which could end up being fairly uncomfortable. Why do we have some of these? If you've got a horse that's got a damaged tongue, so then you need something that's going to get away from his tongue and allow him to have a comfortable mouth. I had one other one. Oh, here it is. We're done with them, we'll throw them on the floor. So this one, it has a little bit of a port. If I was showing in the quarter horse world, is this legal? Yep, it is. Just. How do I know that? I measured it to make sure it's legal. It's called a cathedral mouthpiece. It's got some tongue relief. It's going to lay on the horse's tongue when he holds his head in the correct position. And because it's got really straight shanks, as soon as I ask, when this starts to move, he knows that it's time to do something and to pay attention. It's a signal. So in rough terms, it's a signal bit. When my hand moves and that comes off his tongue, we're going to do something. Now, would I ride with this? No, I wouldn't. I'd like to learn how, but right now, no. I don't have a good enough seat, good enough legs, and for sure don't have good enough hands. And I don't mind admitting that. That's just, I don't ride enough to be good enough to ride one of these. I have a horse that can ride one of these, but he and I get along much better if I don't. So I want to know how's it going to fit in his mouth and those sorts of things. The other part to it is, what's it made of? And I love the term sweet iron because you don't know if it's sweet or not. And I'm not going to suggest, I always tell my students in the fall in my tools and tack class, I said, now don't go to the tack store and start licking all the bits to see which ones are sweet, because just don't do that. But basically all sweet iron is a cold rolled steel and it will rust. So this one is a sweet iron bit and it's got a little rust on it. So that tends to, or what they believe, makes it more palatable to the horse. I don't know how you would ever determine that, but they tend to ride in these really nicely with this kind of mouthpiece. They salivate a little bit, keep their mouth soft, become very responsive. So that works well, that we would do that. The copper mouthpieces, and there's all kinds. So this is a little more of the old school copper. So it's a solid copper mouthpiece. With the price of copper these days, you get the solid copper ones. They are expensive because copper is expensive. There are some new ones that are out now. And this is a multiple piece curb bit. It's a correction bit. It's got copper bars. They are actually, they roll, they move. More of a copper alloy. And you'll see some of the ones that are a really shiny copper won't have the deep copper color that this does. Those are actually a copper alloy. So they have the copper properties of being that will contribute to salivation, but they're a little harder, so they last longer. This great big package, you can see the teeth marks in it. So they'll chew on them pretty good. Will they chew it all the way through? Probably, hopefully not. Hopefully you're checking it often enough that will happen. But copper and sweet iron supposedly have a taste that the horses like, and they work reasonably well. Stainless steel, really common, inexpensive, strong, easy to clean, always looks good. It's been around for a really long time. Certainly in the English world, you see a lot of stainless steel bits. There's some other things that people are trying. I'm not sure the reason that we need to. I think we have enough that work. And some of the things they're saying, I read a paper not that long ago about some people that were going to try titanium because it's not biologically inert, but it kind of is. It's like, but how can you compare a pin that you would put in somebody's broken leg with something you're going to put in a horse's mouth? That I don't get why we would need to do that. Plus, they're frightfully expensive. And they say it doesn't get as hot in the horse's mouth. Well, how long have you got, on your trail ride would be the time to determine how hot the bits get. When you go for the whole day, if I ride for 20 minutes, what difference is it going to make? Enough? I don't know. Chrome, again, the cheaper bits quite often are chrome. I always watch for those because if anything gets underneath that chrome plating and causes it to rust, it will flake off. And it will leave a nice, uncomfortable, sharp edge where the chrome has flaked off. And I guess you could put the chrome back on, or you could do something else, but the more inexpensive bits are like that. Rubber, oh, we have to have rubber. Why would we have rubber? Because it's really nice and soft, and I guess horses like really nice and soft. The one thing with these, if they chew them, this is a solid rubber one. I have one that's got a cable through it. And my very first horse, a delightful hackney pony with a attention span of a gnat, chewed pretty much all the way through it. So you can see the cable in a lot of places, and it's like, well, I bet you that could have been a really fun disaster. Snap, and now I've got 2 rings flying past my ears as we're going down the road. That would not have been good. But people will put these in more as a start to getting a horse used to carrying something in his mouth, so he can chew it and play with it and do that sort of stuff, and it just helps them a little faster, but not do very much other than that. You know, the old style rubber bits, and again, this one's really old, so this rubber is really hard. There's no softness to this at all. And this horse has enjoyed this bit a lot because he's chewed it up. And again, my students wanted to know, so what's underneath that? So I have one at home where I've actually cut all the rubber off, and it's just not very pretty stuff. And then I got this, a newer one. It's just rubber over top of steel. It is not that soft. They can probably chew on it a little bit, but if you're thinking that it's going to be really comfortable, sort of like putting, gel insoles in your shoes, no, it doesn't do that. They might be more comfortable because they can grab it with their teeth and hold on to it, which might not be comfortable for you, because if they're holding onto the bit, that means that they're not listening to you. And as you're going by those spray painted trees and everybody else on the trail, you might not be all that happy. So they're there. And lastly, it's probably on the next slide too. It's not. Nope. Well, we won't, but the synthetic ones, I love this one. It's called a Happy Mount. I got it because the person that bought it for their horse, so it would be happy, wasn't happy. And so I traded her a Kimber wick for this, which I thought was a great bit of business. My Kimber wick cost me $1.95 because I bought it in a box of 20 bits. This probably cost $25 or $30. And they'll come flavored. This is just a synthetic material, but they come flavored. You can get them where they have apple on the outside, peanut butter on the inside. And again, who came up with that for horses? Like, did we do a survey? Was there something on SurveyMonkey that said, ask your horse if he likes apples? It's like, just because they eat apple doesn't mean that they like the flavor of it all that much. So, like it. So, lots of choices. Lots of choices. And remember, when we have our snaffle, we're going to have pressure on the corners of his mouth, the interdental space or the bars, on his tongue, and potentially the roof of his mouth or the palate. And it depends on how much you want to have control or how dictatorial your hands are. Gonna break something?
No, I think somebody's wanting to join. Just gonna let them in here. Somebody new.
Somebody knew.
Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay, I'm not starting from the beginning. So we just need to think about that's where it is. And so all of that, when you think about it, there's not that much room in your horse's mouth. Have any of you have ever, just for fun, looked in your horse's mouth after you put the bridle on? See where his tongue is? See how quiet, Do you need to do that? I don't know. I had the dentist out to one of our UK horses, and his first question to me was, he said, so how often do you look in this horse's mouth? It's like, well, when I put the bridle on the left side, he said, well, come and look at the right side. This horse had a rather unique tooth, and it was like, oh yeah, look look, be attentive. So when we look at snaffle bits, we got some choices. We have the loose ring or the O-ring. They're pretty flexible, and they're the one bit that's going to give you both vertical and lateral movement in the horse's mouth. It's the only one that does. Some people don't like them because they're too mobile, and the horse may not understand the signal as completely as another bit. And other people just love them because the fact they are movable and the horse can kind of play with them. But you'll also get some horses that's all they do. Versus the egg butt, which is going to give you an opportunity to have a little bit of lateral pressure. So when I pull, I can push a little bit on this side while I'm pulling with this side, but it's going to stay pretty stable. And the message is going to be really clear. And that's why a lot of people like these, or they like the D-ring for the same thing. And you do get some lateral pressure. And it's interesting, when we look at the D-ring, and it's confusing because of what we are in the horse industry, those are all the names that people will talk about. And I have a friend that comes and teaches in my class, and he's adamant that it should never be called a D-ring because it's not a ring. Well, what's a ring? It's not worth arguing with him, but it's like when he says stuff like that, he also says that the only way you can have a snaffle bit is it must be jointed like this. He doesn't believe that straight bar bits are, I mean, it's kind of interesting, but he comes from a racing background, so this is all they use by and large. So when people talk about things, you need to understand kind of where they're coming from. And actually the Western D bit is a little bit different in its structure. It's kind of hard to see, but it has a rounder ring in the little and a shorter part that attaches to the mouthpiece. And you'll see these a lot more in a lot of Western riders that are using a snaffle bit. They quite often will use these, and they'll in the catalog actually often be called a Western D. That's what they are, or what we've decided that they are. Come on. It does not. Well, I'm afraid if I hit it too hard, it'll be like 87 slides, and it's like I have no idea how to get it back. The last one that we see every now and then are the full cheek snaffles. So they have those wonderful things that go up the side. I had to bring one because we all should look at these. And does anybody, and it's kind of hard because we're not going to look at the chat, so I can't really ask you the question, but do you know why these long things are there? Yeah. Can you imagine if you're pulling so hard that this is going through their mouth? Oh, you are in trouble. You are really in trouble. It's like, oh. That just, every time I read that, it just kind of gives me pause. It's like, my goodness gracious. But I have seen people pull a shank bit through a horse's mouth. I mean, he was one tough neck son of a gun. He was not going to go right. It did not matter what you decided. But there's that. The other thing they do is they give you great lateral pressure because all of this is going to push on the side of his face. So you are going to get a little extra message. You are supposed to use them with these handy dandy little keepers, except if you're the man from Snowy River, because he doesn't use keepers. If you've ever watched the movie, notice he does not have keepers. You'll also find that after we think about bits and bridles, next time you're watching a movie that has a horse with a bridle on it, you're going to be looking not at the actor, you're going to see if that bridle's right. And I'll tell you right now, 90% of the time, it won't be. But so we have those. A English bit If you're riding in the Western disciplines where you're actually going to go in the show ring, these are not allowed. I'm not really sure why, other than the fact you're probably not using the keepers, and it may give you a slight competitive advantage because of that lateral pressure. So they don't let you do it. And then the Fulmer, the only difference between the two is the fact that it's got a loose ring on the side. I didn't bring one. And so it gives you a little different message. You've got the bridle is attached, but it's a little looser. You don't see those very often. Not very many people ride in them. And I didn't bring any of the other double bridles. If we look at curb bits, again, huge choices. You know, we can figure out, do we want a long shank or a short shank? Do we want a loose shank? Do we want a straight shank, a slightly not straight to a really, really not straight? You know, what do we want and why? And we'll look at some of those. So again, real quick review. It is to put pressure on the bars. We're going to have pressure on the tongue. Depending on how the bit is constructed, it may impact the palate or not. Going to impact the chin groove because curb bits are supposed to be ridden with a curb strap or curb chain. Does everybody do that? Nope. But you're supposed to. That makes the bit work the way it's designed to work. I have a friend that has a horse that she says, I just can't ride him with a curb strap. And she has a bit that's very much like this. So without a curb strap, it's not doing very much. I said, why don't you just ride him with a snaffle bit? Well, I am. No, this is not a snaffle bit. If it has a curb chain on it, you know, why don't you just ride him with that? And it's like, when I asked that question, it was a little bit of an aha moment. It was like, I don't know. I don't know. And then the pull pressure. So when the bit, when we pull back, this goes forward till it engages the curb strap. And then it puts pressure right up cheeks of the bridle onto the pole. So for all intent and purposes, these help you to get your horse to put his head down. The snaffle bit helps you to lift his head up. Just because of the function. Again, a little bit of physics. Who knew we'd have to do physics tonight? Port height. So theoretically, if it is not greater than 2 inches, it will not impact the most normal horse's palate. It won't hit them in the roof of the mouth. So you see a lot, and I remember growing up, everybody would be all excited about some of their Pelham bits that the English kids would ride with that would have just a bump in the middle. And it's like, you have a port. It's like, and we all worried about it. But now I know it probably didn't do anything, good or bad. You want to have a fairly, not too wide a port, because the wider it gets, the less likely the horse can maybe do what he needs to. But if you have a horse that needs a lot of tongue relief, we're going to make it wide. And then lots of shapes. They're rounded, they're tall and narrow. That bit on the far left is a half-breed is what it's called. They tend to have a very straight bar for the mouthpiece and then a port sticking up. That one has a roller in it. Some people treat them because they're pacifiers for their horse. Remember, we had a young lady at 4-H. When she was in the lineup at the end of the class, you could hear her horse from anywhere in Broadbent because he'd get playing with that cricket and it was really loud and she would get embarrassed. And I remember her saying one day, she said, I got to get a new bit because this noise is just, I mean, it's distracting me. And I said, well, maybe your horse needs a different rider because I'm guessing that he's upset because of you, not the bit. She didn't like that a whole lot, but he was kind of a cute horse. And, you know, you'll see all different things. You'll see square ones. You'll see like this, we have our cathedral. We'll have a variety of different kinds. And when you think about it, as the shape changes, if it happens to be such a height that it's going to impact the roof of the horse's mouth, the shape of it's going to make a difference. You know, it's no different than the thick bits and the thin bits. You know, if we change the shape and we diversify it, what's that going to do? Well, it's going to change the pressure. And so you'll see some of those ones, and I didn't bring mine, I don't think. So, that's very flat. They call it spoon shaped. Or you'll see the big spade bits, and everybody gets all excited about spade bits. Oh, they're terrible. It takes 8 years or more to get a horse in a spade bit. And teach him to carry his head right and to be able to respond. And if you really watch those good spade bit horses, they're not moving their hands very much. Those horses are all guided by their legs. And the interesting thing with a lot of that is you lay the rein on their neck, and if you want to go that way, you take your leg off, give them a place to go, and push with the other one. I mean, when you think about it, it actually makes quite a bit of sense. And if you spend time, those horses are really good. I'm going to have a spade bit horse. That's on my bucket list. And I'm going to learn how to ride one. I don't know if I'll live long enough. Come on. So there you go. That's how you measure them. From the bottom of the bars to the top of the port. And again, from a discipline standpoint, this gets really confusing because not everybody measures everything the same way. But from an anatomical standpoint, that's how you want to measure it. And if you're riding someplace that has a rule, learn what the rule is. And also learn how they're measured by that rule, just to make sure, because not always the same. That also goes for shank length. So, you know, the longer the shank, the more leverage you have. But if you look, again, where are they measuring from? So typically, we would measure shank length from the top of the bridle ring, just inside, to the center of the ring where the rein pull is. So on this one, I'm going to measure from here to here. Now, are there groups that measure from here to here? Yes, there are. And people will say, well, what about the fact that you've got that sweep in it? They still measure from there to there. All this change does in my shank is changes the weight. So it makes it just a little bit heavier because there's a little more total material here. And so this one works really nicely. You pick up on it, but as soon as you let go, it drops back to where it's supposed to be. It releases the pressure very quickly. The other thing that becomes important, and I didn't put it in the slide, but if we measure from here to here, which is called the purchase, and the relationship of this to this really gives you your leverage. So the longer this is in comparison to this, your ratio is going to change and you're going to lose leverage. So if this is really short, it's going to make a difference. Like this one. This has got a very short purchase. So the ratio of the purchase to the cheek piece length is going to be pretty significant. So I'm going to have more leverage. So this is really the teeter-totter effect. If I've got a big kid here and a little kid here, I got a lot more. That big kid's getting launched. Only thing is he doesn't know it's coming. And the same with this. So this is going to give you a pretty quick signal and it's going to give a lot of signal. So you need to think about that. And not that we've talked about it, but I don't know. Can't quite remember how I acquired this particular bit, but I was at the tack consignment place And they said, oh yeah, there's nothing interesting since the last time you were here. And this was hanging on the wall. And it's like, sure there is. Sure there is. It's always something interesting. These are kind of interesting. For those of you in the walking horse world, you guys get blamed for certain kinds of bits. Everybody calls them walking horse bits, whether they are or not, it doesn't matter. And I've seen the more traditional walking horse bits that looks like this in tack stores in Oklahoma and Texas, and guess what they call it? So they've got all the nice, not the nice, but they got all the Western bits, and then they got this one hanging there, and on the tag it says walking horse bit. It's like, who made that up? But anyway, the interesting thing with this and these bits, and this is a great example of it, but it's not the only one. You can change the mouthpiece. So it's got screws in the bottom, and you can get some of these where they'll actually come with multiple mouthpieces, or you can go and buy mouthpieces. So if you had a nice bit that you like, but you got a new horse and you still want to use it, but he uses a different mouthpiece, he's got a little bigger mouth, we can go replace it. But as a activity prior to starting your riding season, make sure the screws are in appropriately, because you don't want them to fall out, because then things might not go well. And typically what happens when it comes out is the whole screw falls out, and now we have the mouthpiece attached over here, and we have something attached over there, and we're not talking to the horse. We're now probably praying that he knows what woe is. And if you don't think it ever happens, it does. It wasn't a screw coming loose, but we were at an intercollegiate horse show, semifinals in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Really nice horse, girl came riding in, asked him to whoa, picked up on the reins, and the bit fell apart in the horse's mouth. A really expensive bit, and it just disintegrated. It was just like a correction bit, but it just came apart. And the horse started to get a little antsy. The young lady that was riding got very antsy, and the coach that was there, who was in control of the horse, yelled whoa, and you'd have thought somebody welded him to the ground. He just stood there and never moved. It was just like, I have no idea what's going on, but I don't think it's good. I tried to buy the bit, but they said, no, it is a brand X. It's guaranteed. We're getting another one. It's like, darn, really would have liked to have had that broken one for things like this. But couldn't get it. So think about how long it is. So the longer it is, the more leverage you're going to have, but also check to see what that purchase is, because the shorter it is, then that does give you more leverage. Curb straps, they contribute to the leverage. They contribute to how the bit works. Put some pressure on the chin groove. And again, most of us are just going to have either a leather or a chain one. Now, competitive wise, it depends on what you're doing, because there's even rules about curb straps and curb chains. So that bit is another half breed. If you were riding in the rein cow horse world, you must use a leather curb strap. And the only metal that can be on that curb strap is the buckles. It has to be buckled on. It's just, I mean, it's the way it is. Why? I think they think it will be better for the horse. And then, we can have chain. We can have chain, and we can put them in those nice rubber holders that take the pressure off and make it more comfortable for the horse. You can get them leather, a single chain, the double chain, straight leather, all kinds. And I would think that you use what works the best for your horse. But if you've got a curb bit or a leverage bit, put a curb strap on it. You don't have to crank it down really tight. You probably want to be able to have, it's again, one of those rules of thumb. You should be able to put 2 fingers through. My leased horse, the second And actually, it was the first day I rode him. And I had him all bridled up and I had everything. I was worried about how it fit in his corners of his mouth and was he happy and all that sort of stuff. Get on riding him. I picked my hand up and there's nothing. I'd neglected to do up the curb chain to a point where it was actually effective. I could get 2 fingers in, then I could get 4 fingers in, and then I could put my other, I mean, it was, and the guy I ride with he couldn't yell at me because he was laughing too hard. Good thing is a broke horse, but it was like, there is nothing. What's going on with this? Why did I buy this bit? And it was like, why didn't you put it on correctly? I did scold myself. So remember, curb, snaffle, it is not the mouthpiece, it is the action of the pressure. Period. Because I can have a jointed mouthpiece on my shank bits, I can have a straight bar, I can have a ported bit on my snaffle bits. It is how everything works that we have to remember and not get so caught up in if it's not jointed, it's not. If it's got multiple joints, and lots of bits have multiple joints, so it doesn't matter. Real quick, and then we'll be done. Some horses don't like bits in their mouths. So we have the bitless bridles, all sorts of things. So we have, like a hackamore that has some leverage and puts pressure on the chin group. Not much lateral with those horses, but and actually depending on how you put it on, you can have some of those horses, they will root through that, and good luck getting them to get their head up. How do I know that? Because I rode with that particular one on the far left, and I rode a friend's horse. First time that they decided to go on a trail ride with him, and it's like, well, you can try him. You helped my dad buy him, so he's a great horse. He put his head down when we went through the gate and started bucking. I thought I was at the Calgary Stampede because we had audio, we had all the physical, and it was like, and I'm pulling with both hands for all I'm worth, and I could not get his head up until he finally sort of bucked himself into a fence and stopped. And my boss came over and said, maybe I'll ride him and you could ride this other one. It's like, yeah, that's a good idea. I've got a Boselle in the middle. And again, depending on where you live, they're going to call it the way they pronounce is Boselle is supposedly the way you're supposed to say it, but it's called Bosel. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. It's rawhide, puts pressure on the sides and on the nose. Typically, it's a training device. It's a stage, and in history, they went with those as the horse was changing his teeth, and it was also the way to start them when they were going to get him into the spade bit. So you would ride him with this, put the bit in his mouth, let him carry the bit, and then start to gradually teach him about guiding with the bit while still riding with the Boselle. And then I do happen to have a Dr. Cook bitless bridle. It's not a name brand Dr. Cook bitless bridle because I can't afford those. That actually is one made out of that biothane. No bit in the horse's mouth. It puts pressure underneath their jaw and on their head. Some people love them. I've never ridden with one. When I bought that one, it was at a used tax sale, and when I walked up to the cashier and she said, "You do know that doesn't come with a bit, right?" It's like, yep, that's why I'm buying it, because it's a bitless bridle. And there's a few people that were not very happy that I found it first because I didn't pay very much money for it. So added to my collection. And then lastly, why do people do what they do? This come off Facebook? Yes. I have had more unique pictures come off Facebook. I have another one where they took a curb bit, and I cannot figure out for the life of me how they came up with the way they put it on the bridle and in the horse's mouth. And it actually wasn't on Facebook. It was on eBay. And the caption was, "Need to sell, horse doesn't like it." It's like, no kidding. It's upside down, backwards. I mean, I showed the picture in class, and my students said, "How long did it take you to figure out how to get it that way?" It's like, even I couldn't do that. because I still can't remember all of the things. So think about how it's supposed to go on, make sure that things fit and that your horse is comfortable, respectful, and when you go out on your ride, you come back in one piece. And there we go. So thanks to the people that are in Zoom land. Thank you, Reed.
Yeah, definitely, Dr. Coleman.
Hopefully this worked. Believe me, I have not done it this way before.
Oh, yeah, neither have I. So,
See, that's the greatest thing about extension. You have to be flexible and willing to try something new.
absolutely, absolutely. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Coleman? While we've got him on here, if you're on Zoom, feel free to unmute and ask or type in the chat box. Anybody here?
And if the ones that are here want to come and look at stuff, doesn't bother me if you touch stuff. And it has been disinfected, by the way. Started COVID last year. I bought 2 gallons of Novacin. And I don't cut it with water. I've been using it straight. I actually did
Can't find it anymore.
I know, well, you have to know a veterinarian that you can get it. I actually have to drive to Louisville to get mine. Because that's where my friend, the veterinarian, is. But it's interesting, when COVID started and people were saying, well, how do we deal with riding and riding lessons and tacking equipment and shared things? And it was amazing that there was sort of this great lack of ideas of what to do. So I actually took some pieces of leather, I cleaned them like you normally would, and then I started spraying them with Novosan every day. And I did that for 2 weeks, and nothing happened. Now, somebody said, did you check it for bugs before and after? No, I was spraying it in my garage. I have no idea. And I wasn't worried about the bugs. I was worried about if I do something, well, think about it. If you've just bought a nice new bridle that cost you, I don't know, $50 or $60. I mean, you buy a nice pair of leather reins, easily cost you $50. And somebody says, oh, just spray them with Novosan, it'll be fine. And they turn purple. Not going to be very happy with that person, are you? So I did that. I washed nylon halters. I washed a variety of lead ropes. Yes, and I washed them in the washing machine to see, basically, can you do it? Because we knew at that point that if you used soap and water, it was pretty effective. So it's like, you got to multiple use stuff, then wash it. And the other thing I did learn is Dawn liquid detergent. It will fix everything. Everything. It's amazing.
Not any questions come in, Dr. Coleman, but do you want to go ahead and preview the next installment of this, which
Sure.
is April? It's on hoof care,
Hoof care.
April the 15th
Yep.
at 6 p.m.
And so Mr. Mitch Taylor from the Kentucky Horseshoeing School is coming to be our speaker. I've already not warned him, but set him up that we wanted to talk about the different kinds of equipment that we might use to be able to deal with our horses' feet. And actually, hopefully we'll be able to bring it and show it, but we are doing a video on Wednesday on how to take a shoe off with really basic and simple tools. So a little bit more than a claw hammer and vice grips and maybe a screwdriver, but if you have these basic things, this is how you can do it and get yourself out of a jam. And part of the reason for that is, and a little bit of it kind of came out with Dr. Camargo's presentation, but I see a lot of the ones that show up on Facebook, the easy how-to things. And the guys that are doing it have got more equipment than Carter's got pills. I mean, none of us have that. So what I've challenged for our video with Mr. Taylor is I said, we got to be able to do with this with the tools that I have in my truck when I show up here at the school next Wednesday. So yeah, I mean, we might show you how to use a set of crease nail pullers. But at, $60 or $70 for that tool alone, you might be waiting until next Christmas to get that. But, a good set of pull-offs, and they're not cheap, a good rasp, potentially a hammer, and maybe a clinch cutter, maybe. But, what can we do with some really simple tools that as horse owners, I believe we should consider having in our toolbox. And so and then he's also going to talk, sort of what his job as a farrier is, sort of what your expectations could be and why farriers do what they do. He will enjoy being on camera. He is a very engaging speaker. He just wants you to know about what he can do to help your horses have better feet. Is he going to stand here and tell you each and every one of you got to slap shoes on your horse? No, he won't do that. And he doesn't believe it. But if your horse needs it, and that's the way to keep him comfortable and happy and going, then put them on. So there's all those sorts of things, but I think you'll find him quite entertaining. He and I have been doing talks like this for almost 20 years now.
Oh, wow. Is he going to travel to Jackson?
Yeah, he's coming with me.
Good.
I'll
Well,
pick him
we'll
up I'll pick him up at his house.
We'll be doing this both virtually and in person like this, and I hope you all that joined virtually had a good experience. I hope everybody here did as well. Any
Well,
more questions for Dr. Coleman?
Thanks, everybody, for coming. Glad
Yeah.
everybody got out.
Definitely.
Hope everything's going all right for everybody.